You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. With the election of the major principal officers of a National Assembly concluded, the politics of who gets what is almost over, and it's time for the 10th Assembly to get to work immediately. The Senate and House of Representatives are on a 2-week recess to resume on July 4th. The 10th Assembly is inheriting a nation with economic challenges, ranging from revenue shortfalls, a huge budget deficit and debt burden, as well as high unemployment rates. And Nigerians are looking to federal lawmakers to provide legislative interventions to these challenges, as well as cushioning the effects of the removal of petroleum subsidy. We went into the streets of Abuja to get the opinions of Nigerians on areas they want their representatives in the National Assembly to focus on immediately.
Well, I believe the 10th Assembly is coming at a critical time that Nigeria is yearning, firstly for restructuring, and that means that the 10th Assembly must be prepared to give the people a new people's constitution. We are not expecting a reviewed constitution any longer, because we cannot continue to review a law that emanates from a military decree, the Decree 24 of the Supreme Military Council of Abdul Salami. Is the entire constitution. That is what the constitution rests on. So the National Assembly should be able to give us a true people's constitution that emanates from the people, that with the amalgam of all the constitutional reviews that people have contributed from the confab, from every resolutions, they should be able to harmonize first and review and now present to the public as the discussions that were picked from various terms of discourse as an harmonized people's constitution that will now be put out in all languages, especially in Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, just for the common understanding of the citizens, because there is no essence of having a law that the people doesn't understand. So it's very critical they give us a law, and most importantly, they should look into the governance structure in view of the fact that a new people's constitution will be coming on, but there are some certain content and element and issues that must be raised, especially the issue of devaluation of power, of devolution of power from cutting issues of exclusive and concurrent listing. These are issues that must be brought to the table.
I got to know that some governors are complaining about the PIA bill, that's Petroleum Industrial Act bill. They should look at it again and see areas where there are some mistakes or some errors, some disagreement that need to be corrected, because that bill is very germane for this issue of subsidy removal. And when that bill is looked into properly, the areas that will benefit the masses should be looked into properly.
I expect them to maintain, maximum cooperation with the executive, because most of the times there is a certain impression being created by many people. The moment they see the National Assembly and the executive moving together without any antagonism, they feel maybe they are become rubber stamp. My own point of view, it is not so. Looking at the event of the past, whenever the executive is having legislative arm of government is having issue with the executive by virtue of their own role, it's like it's trying to create an atmosphere of rancor that is capable of consuming the nation. Whenever the executive arm of government is in time with the legislative arm, things move smoothly. So from our point of view, with regard to that, I think it is more advisable for the executive arm of government and the legislative arm to work in harmony.
Security is a serious problem to Nigeria, even though it's globally. But how do we address our own? Because it's peculiar. People have been accusing government. Government have never refute that any security that lasted for over 24 hours, they are aware of it. Can there be any law also from the National Assembly, the 10th National Assembly precisely, to ensure that the government, which is the federal government now, has no hand in insecurity.
Staying with the topic of expectations from the 10th Assembly, we had a chat with a federal lawmaker in the House of Representatives from Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Unyime Idem, to discuss the legislative agenda of the 10th Assembly.
For me, looking at the situation of the country at the moment, I think we should focus mostly on the recovery of the economy. I think if we get that right, the benefit will not just be for the people of our federal constituencies, but also the entire country. You and I can attest to the fact that at the moment, our economy is looking very bad. And then I think the previous assembly, the 8th and the 9th assembly has been concentrating much effort on making bills, making laws, passing good motions that bring about good policies of government. But I think in the 10th assembly, the main focus will be how do we support the new governments to bring out some policies that will guarantee recovery of the economy of the country. In terms of, the price of things in the country that you can see that is so high, the cost of things. And then in terms of the issue of insecurity that really affected our economy. We are also looking at the area of importation, how it affects the economy. So we are going to support the president. We are going to collaborate to promote some policies that will bring about total recovery of the economy. That will be the main focus of the 10th Assembly.
It's good you mentioned oversight, as part of the things that the 10th Assembly will be taking seriously. And this is very important because we know oversight in the 9th Assembly was sorely lacking, and that was one of the major criticisms against the 9th Assembly.
If I use the word collaboration, that doesn't mean that the Parliament is going to be subject to the executive. No, we are going to be very much independent. We are going to be like a watchdog to whatever the executive is doing. We are going to be like auditors to check the excesses of the executive. And I want to commend the new president for what he has done. I think what we are planning, especially myself as a member of the House of Representatives, what we are planning is that we are going to devote much effort in the area of oversights. I know that as Parliament, we have three main functions of the Parliament. One, to make law, and then the second one is representation. But the third one is where we are going to put much energy, which is oversight. We have so much resources that are leaking on daily basis, so much leakages in our resources, in our economy. So we had a little challenge in the 9th Assembly where we couldn't really exhibit our duty as lawmakers in terms of oversight. There were some, big wigs in the system where if you call them, they might not want to appear. They believe that they are touch nuts. So I don't think the 10th Assembly that we are looking at is going to, accept such situation where you invite any arms of the executive to appear before the committees or before the entire House, and then they will now say no. The 10th Assembly is not willing, is not ready to accept that. So that's why I said that the word collaboration is quite different from, being the Parliament being a stooge to the executive. We cannot do that.
Now, with the 10th Assembly, coming on board very soon, we're going to see both houses roll out its legislative agenda for the next 4 years. What are some of the things you think will be on the agenda and should be on the agenda given the state of the country, the state of the economy?
Well, apart from talking about the recovery of the economy, which for me is going to be the main focus, the next thing is going to be about the electoral law that we have just passed, the 2022 amended this electoral law. We are going to fine-tune that law to guarantee total total transparency in terms of election in 2027. The electronic voting system that we are using now, I can tell you, is not 100% electronic. But I know that we are going to do something about it so that what we see in the international community is what we are going to practice in the country in terms of using electronic in our electoral processes. That's one area we are going to look at. And I also know that when we passed the amended Electoral Act 2022, I think there was a small mistake that we had in that particular law. I hope that we are going to correct it. If you recall, during the last primaries, the elected officials were not part of the voting process. Even the party officials, they were not there. So we are going to also make a frantic effort to ensure that we correct that mistake that was there. So it's also part of the issues that we are going to look at in the 10th Assembly. But I can tell you that the major focus will be on economic recovery.
Previous assemblies have reviewed or amended the Constitution, and we know that the 10th Assembly would also be looking at reviewing the 1999 Constitution. And so what are some of the clauses which you feel should be included in the new phase of constitutional amendment by the 10th Assembly?
I think there are some areas that we are going to look at as soon as we start the 10th Assembly. At the moment we are on a short break. So we are going to resume on the 4th of next month. So when we resume, we'll sit down and look at what will be the agenda for the 10th Assembly. And like I said earlier, those other inputs that we have individually, we can also bring to the front burner. But I know that the House will also have its own agenda that we are going to focus on as far as our laws is concerned. But where we had issue was with the houses of assembly in various states. They were the one that slowed us down. So I think in the 10th Assembly, we'll do our best to ensure that we collaborate with them to get that particular law, amended.
So personally, what kinds of legislations would you be introducing in the 10th Assembly? And maybe not only legislations, but motions. What do we expect from you in the 10th Assembly?
In the 10th Assembly, I'm looking at the kind of parliamentary engagement that will promote our constituents' welfare is very important. We need to look at security of the people that we are representing. It's very important because by the time you leave the federal capital territory and then get into different states, you see the level of crisis, insecurity that is rocking the entire country. So we are going to do our best to see how we can cope this menace.
Now, one of the issues, analysts have pointed out in the 9th Assembly was that we had a weak opposition. There was a weak opposition. We didn't see the opposition really make a stand on some of the policies and actions of government and even the stance of the National Assembly on some matters.
I think opposition is, it is inevitable for opposition to exist in a government of this nature. But at the same time, being opposition doesn't mean that we should oppose every policy of the government. We can only look at policies that we know that is going to affect the country and also affect the interests of the people that we are protecting before we can now, protest or oppose. So I can tell you that with the number that we have, if government comes up with policies that we know is going to be detrimental to the survival of what's it called now? Survival of the people that we are representing. There is no way we can close our eyes and then watch this kind of thing going on. We need to speak up. We need to stand up and then speak for them. We need to protect their interests. So it's only when it happens that I can tell you this is what we'll do. But for now, I can't really predict what will be the direction.
Now, speaking about, to dwell more on this issue of the opposition in the Ninth Assembly, we didn't see, lawmakers from the opposition talk about or make a stance different on issues of, ways and means. Though in the Senate, we did see some opposition lawmakers, express their concerns about the ways and means. But even issues of loans, the loans which the presidency was always requesting from the National Assembly was always, agreeing to. We didn't see much of the opposition come up to make a strong stance on these issues, which turned out to be quite, questionable.
Okay, I think I said earlier that one of the constraints that we had in the Ninth Assembly was the fact that there were some, chief executive in the executive arms of government in the Ninth Assembly that they were seen as touch nuts, and that the Ninth Assembly they were willing to do their work, but unfortunately, sometimes you try to investigate a particular matter that would have escalated those issues, but they don't respond. And there's nothing we would have done at that point. There's nothing we would have done. So that's why I believe that in the 10th Assembly, the president is a Democrat, as we know. I don't think he's going to shield anybody that will be invited for questioning about a particular issue. I don't think he's going to do such a thing. But even if it does, I think the kind of opposition that we have today, well-organized opposition, I think we are going to speak up at that point. But we don't envisage. We don't envisage that we are going to encounter such situation in the 10th Assembly. I don't think so. So we'll do our best to ensure that we escalate those things. I don't think we are going to have those kind of head of agencies of government in the 10th Assembly that will be touch nuts, just like we encountered in the 9th Assembly. It wasn't really funny where lawmakers were willing to do their job, but some persons were really truncating the process. We're not happy about it. So I believe in the 10th Assembly, we are not going to accept that. Instead, we are going to go to the head of the executive, who is the president, to report the situation and also see how we can be protected to do our work. That's what we'll do. We are going to be very much independent in the 10th Assembly.
Another issue which, some lawmakers themselves even have talked about is that some of the, many of the recommendations from motions, in previous assemblies, the executive has been reluctant to implement those resolutions. And so what would be different in the 10th Assembly on this matter?
Okay, I think I said earlier that there would be immense benefits when it comes to collaboration between the Parliament and the executive. There are lots for us to benefit from there. One of those benefits is the fact that when there is that collaboration, you have a matter of urgent public importance that comes through motion, as you said. We can actually beckon on the executive to say that this particular matter is such that if adequate response is not given right now, the escalation is not something the country will appreciate. So there is no way you make such presentation that they will not listen to. And let me also say this, that not all motions that warrant immediate response from my little knowledge in the 9th Assembly. And I want to also commend the immediate past president in the person of President Buhari, that there were some sensitive motions that were passed in the 9th Assembly and within stipulated period, and he acted on those motions. I think I have one of those motions. I think, let me say about 2. Though I move about 24 motions in the 9th Assembly, but out of 24, I can tell you that up to 20 receive instant responses. One of such is when I encountered one of the agencies of government called the Federal Character Commission. I discovered that as at the time I resumed work in 2019, there were no commissioners to man that particular commission. It was only one commissioner from Zamfara State that was in charge of the commission as the chairman and also as member. So things were not moving, rightly in that particular agency. And I pick up that motion. I presented that motion, and then we advised the executive. I think the president acted within 30 days. So within 30 days, 36 commissioners, including the one that represented Abuja, was appointed. And then they manned that particular commission. And since then, the commission has been running very effectively. It was through motion that that particular place was set up outside the one commissioner that they had as at that time. And I can also remember another motion that I raised. I think that particular one had to do with the COVID-19. I was the one that raised that motion. When we raised the motion as a house and sent to the executive, it took the president with 7 days to set up a committee to work around the pandemic that was ravaging the country. Okay, I think it was, we noticed it, we observed it in other countries. We now say, okay, something has to be done before the thing will now, come into the country. So the president responded within 7 days. The one of the Federal Character Commission, he responded within 30 days. So I would say that there are some motions that required immediate attention, immediate response. And there are some that has to be responded to in a long term.
One of the things the President Tinubu will be doing soon is to submit the ministerial list to the National Assembly, specifically to the Senate for screening and confirmation. Although we know that the House of Reps is not involved in this process, but we do know that the Ninth Assembly, which we were part of, passed a constitutional amendment for the President to attach portfolios to the ministerial list, and President Buhari did not assent to that constitutional review. And so what would you want to see the 10th Senate do differently in terms of screening ministerial nominees?
Well, first and foremost, I think it wasn't right that we didn't get that particular law passed, or signed by Mr. President, because we thought, going forward, the names and the list will be going together. That was what we thought. The names and the portfolio will be going together. That was the idea behind that particular law. But since it didn't happen, I want to say that maybe in the 10th Assembly, we might achieve that. It might be one of the issues that we are going to look at so that we can get that particular law signed by Mr. President. But going beyond that, I think the senators this time around should look at the quality of persons sent to the National Assembly for confirmation. They should look at the quality of people. It shouldn't be based on sentiments. And I also advise Mr. President, looking at the way the economy is, we should look at technocrats, people that we believe they have what it takes to, support this country to recover the economy. We shouldn't do it based on, mere political sentiments or whatever kind of sentiment. It should be based on who this person is. Competency should come to play, and then the person's wealth of experience should be, consideration.
This is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.